Sorry, I just had a massage. I'm a little of it. I'll be wittier in a minute. Get the coffee in me.
You're going to be witty. We
Well, by my standards.
Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 471 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm your host, Paul E. Cooley, and joining me today, a very special guest host, Mr. David Wood. How are you, Mr. David Wood?
But I'm a little disappointed. I thought we were going to say I was Terry, but I finally shaved the damn beard off.
No.
The more youthful I look now.
No. We don't want to compare you to Terry because we're afraid somebody will be found lacking in that particular assessment, and then there will be words, arguments, feelings hurt, things like that. We don't want that. We don't.
Yes, because he and I are terribly insecure people.
That's correct. You are. I can truthfully say I know this to be a fact.
Everything's dramatic. And meanwhile, Paul's getting sex change.
Okay. Fake news. Wow, fake news. Anyway, Mr. David Wood is author of the Dame Maddox Adventures, a Kindle world devoted to that, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff, including a new collection just released called 10 Open Graves, which includes my novel Closet Treats, Justin McCumber's novel Stillwater, and nothing by Terry Mixon, because Terry Mixon does not write anything that has an edge to it. Anyway.
Yeah, it's horror, but not horrible, so we couldn't put
we couldn't put his works in there. They're just horrible. Anyway, so Mr. David Wood is stepping in for Terry this week because Terry has a deadline, and he's also, my understanding, giving birth to an alien that's going to burst through his lungs any moment now. So rather than putting him on here and having him cough and spew phlegm at the screen the entire time, I decided that I'd settle for David Wood in his stead. Yeah.
Well, there's the bottom of the barrel, and then there's tipping the barrel over and finding what's under there, and here I am.
And then there's digging through the trash. Anyway, so David, how is your writing going?
Writing is going well. My normal system is that I've got one book that I'm actively writing on, so I'm working on Dame Maddox number 10. I have a For the Love book that I'm warming up today on. That is something I want to write, but I know won't make any money. So I've got that going as my warm-up. And then I'm outlining something else. And that's kind of what's always going on with me, is in some stage of process. So staying busy.
Do you regularly have like 3 books in process?
Yes. Especially if some of my co-authors are working on things. Sometimes there are more than that happening. But with those, I'm not involved until the second draft. Well, no, that's not true. I'm not involved in the first draft. I create the outline. And I take it from there and finish it.
You create the outline, but you have somebody else do all the work.
Yes.
You really are James Patterson.
Yeah, it actually comes back to me for the second draft and then goes to the editor, or to beta as an editor, and I do all of those too. Okay. Out draft number 1. Although some of my outlines are as much as 15,000 words. So I'm sort of writing what I call draft 0.5.
Holy crap, a 15,000 word outline? How does that even work?
Story beats, bits of dialogue, things like that, especially if it's Dame Maddox, because there are certain ways they would react in situations, certain wisecracks I definitely want Sidekick to say, things like that. So it's a way of ensuring that even though it's co-authored, it's going to be my story structure and have the feel of have to work too hard to make it sound like me when I do the second draft.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Crowley books that I write with Alan Baxter, it's a similar thing. He's got great prose, but he mostly writes stuff like you do, dark urban fantasy and horror and things like that. So with action adventure, he's more comfortable if I give him a very thorough outline before he. But I'll mess with his prose less because it's not Dame Maddox.
So how many co-authored books do you have at this point?
I've lost count. I'm going to guess. If you don't count the Kindle world, then there are
math is
sort of counting about 18, I think.
Holy crap. And how long has this been going on? How long have you been doing this?
several years. I started publishing in 2006, and then the collaboration started after I moved out here. So 5.5 years ago, maybe, was the first time I did a collab.
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. So now you're you've got your mansion up in the mountains of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
yep. I can't see George R. R. Martin's house from here, nor Doug Preston's, but I'm still looking.
I'm not even sure what that means.
It's just sad
So
when
what-
the
what
only
are-
time you run into certain people is when you're in New York City, even though you all live in a little town in New Mexico.
That I can understand completely. It's just one of those strange things about the world we live in. That I understand completely.
Yeah. So how about your writing? What's going on?
Still working on finishing up Derelict Destruction. Still have probably, I don't know, 25K left, maybe a little bit more. I'm not going to know until I'm done. I
So
really
you just passed the 200K mark, probably.
No, it's not going to get that big. I think the
That's what you
outside,
said.
I think the outside is going to be 100K, which is
Okay.
still only be 34,000 words away, less than that at this point. So we're honing in. I just I keep getting derailed by having to record audiobooks, doing this show, and other life things that are coming at me. So I'm going to try and finish Destruction this month. I'd love to have it finished by halfway through the month, but it's just depressing because I wanted to have it done in time for Halloween, just like Ares Inferno. Well, guess what? Neither one of them is published yet.
You wanted 10 Open Graves published on Halloween, but the KDP copyright department,
Yeah, screwed us.
it was a collection from various people. So
Yeah.
day after.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Oh, well.
People, I put that link up there and people went and grabbed it. So that's the good thing.
Awesome.
But other than that, I can't. Huh?
9 cents.
I just made 9 cents.
Something like
Awesome.
that. You know, 35%, split 10 ways. We're going to need to sell a lot. But
Yeah.
hopefully it brings our catalogs to the attention of other.
I think that is the most important part of doing any of the bundles. I also think it's the most important part of writing for any kind of collection where you put short stories in there is basically getting your work in front of somebody who would not know that you existed otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, whether they like it or not, bottom line is at least they know who you are now. And hopefully if they like what you did, or you know, maybe they didn't like all of it, but they're willing to give you another chance, then they'll go look at your back catalog. So yeah, I really do think that's important. I was
By the
very
way, you owe
honored
me
you
for putting
asked.
your book first.
Do what now?
So you owe me for putting your book first in the collection.
Oh yeah, I noticed that. We'll discuss that later. Well, actually, it's only because he was going alphabetically in titles.
It's going in reverse order of handsomeness.
Oh, oh, it wounds. It wounds. You bastard. I am really looking forward to getting Derelict put to bed so I can start work on all these other things that keep jumping up and demanding attention. So I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move forward and get the hell out of this particular series, which many people are like, you can't stop this series. Well, it has to end, guys. It just has to end. The conceit.
Your terminology so that it's a cycle within a series, but you still have the series.
Yeah, the conceit.
Marketing.
You cannot make a long-lasting series out of the conceit. It will not work that way. It just won't.
It's a cycle within the golly.
Derelict 10, the other derelict. It's like, what?
We've got to get you straight, dude.
Good luck.
Here, let me write this series that sells well, but it's definitely going to have to end after 3.
Well, yeah. It's for the Derelict Saga. That doesn't mean those characters aren't going to show up in another book.
That's what I'm saying.
Huh?
Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to criticize you no matter what.
This is why I called it a Soul and Beyond universe book. Okay. Soul and Beyond. That's where all the
Okay, so I'm saying change the series name to that, and Derelict can be a cycle within the series.
That's more or less the way it's structured.
Okay, so we'll get you straight.
Look, I knew what I was doing. It's not my fault you don't understand what I was doing. That's not important right now.
No one understands what you're doing.
I know. It's this constant cross I bear, trying to teach all you mere mortals how to understand my divine words.
I was looking for the lightning up here somewhere, but
oh, that look was awesome.
Some great screen captures out of this one.
Oh yeah. I can't wait for the memes to flow. It's like the space must flow. With David Wood, the memes must flow. Yes. All right, given all that bullshit, I guess we should get in today's topic, which is actually with Terry and I believe the episode is called "Is It Done Yet?" So let's go over there and hear what me and the bearded wonder were babbling about.
Paul, when you wrap up a story, is it done?
Is anything ever done?
Well, for certain values of done. For like the artist values of done. Are you ready to abandon that project as soon as you finish writing it?
No, hell no. Hell no. Hell
How do you make it pretty? How do you clean it up? How do you do the final work of taking your story and making it ready for the readers?
All right. When I finish the first draft, after I get that done, I go cry about how horrible it is.
I thought you were drinking. Sorry, I didn't realize. Maybe crying and drinking works together.
I go cry and have the period of self-loathing that always accompanies quote-unquote finishing something.
Hold on. The self-loathing is part of the writing process.
It is.
You're self-loathing all the way through this thing.
Yes, but then the real self-loathing starts. The previous self-loathing is just self-loathing because of the vocation. But after you finish something, the real self-loathing means, whoa, hey, camera.
It says, no, we're going to watch the ceiling. And you can't stop me.
There you go. All right. So, sorry about that. So after I finish it, I put it aside for usually a day or two and then go back and start reading it. And that's when I start doing my edits, my first round of edits. Once that's done, hopefully I find any plot problems or anything else and clean it up as much as I can. And that usually takes a week or two. And then I send it out to beta readers. And then I wait with trepidation about what they're going to say about it.
Have your beta readers ever sent back something that says, this sucks?
Excuse me. No. But
then I think you should stop worrying about the trepidation part. You're going to be okay.
There's going to come a day where I put out a book and my most faithful readers are going to go, why the fuck did you write this thing? I know there's going to be that day where I write a real stinker. It's going to happen eventually.
I'm sorry to tell you this, but your most faithful readers say that now.
Oh, wow. The self-loathing is now really ratcheting up.
They'll be like, but I want the next street story. I loathe you.
Oh, yeah, I've gotten that before. Anyway, so then they hand it off to the beta readers. I'll usually send a copy to Sue to read over, look for plot holes and other things because she'll read it very closely. And then when the comments come back, I incorporate them into the final draft. And then hopefully I have given myself enough time to actually record the book as my final edit before I put it out there. That has not gone so well the last several books. So with Gary's Inferno, that is exactly the way it's going to happen because I'm going to publish it when it's ready to be published.
It sounds like you've got a lot going on for the cleanup and the polish on a book once you're finished writing.
I do, and there are some cases where I haven't gone through the process the way it needs to be done, and I've suffered for it. The book has suffered for it. There's a lot more work I probably should have done on the first Black book, more work I should have done on Arrival. Outbreak obviously missed a couple things. Derelict Marines, Tomb, you name it. There's stuff that I would go back and change if I could, roll back in the time machine. But at the same time, they're there. They are what they are, and you just kind of have to let them go.
If
Abandon
I
them.
could turn back time.
Oh boy. So yes, there are several steps. It's not done, and I put it up there. There's a lot of crap that has to go on, and it's just all part of the thing. Trying to be as quote unquote as professional as possible and put out a decent book. There's still going to be people that find things. There's still going to be people that bitch about this, that, or the other, or don't agree with those decisions I made. And basically, it's like, well, you got to be able to say fuck them. And this is
that the standard response when somebody sends you a note saying, "Why'd you do this? This sucked. Fuck you."
No, it's just basically, hey, that's your book. Go write that. Your books suck. Okay, that's fine. Where's yours?
That'd be a hell of a conversation to be listening on the wall for.
Well, I mean, it's the case, and I know it's November is tomorrow, since we're recording this on
NaNoWriMo.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of folks gearing up for NaNoWriMo, and there's going to be some folks that make it and finish their book in 30 days, and my hat's off to you for doing that. But unless you're really talented, I can't imagine. I would not be able to finish that book and then be done with it. There's still all these steps that it has to go through before it's ready for publication. If you write that cleanly and can get the book done in 30 days and write a good book, then hats off to you, man. You need to go join Jake Bible and his wonderful storming through putting out, 10 or 12 books a month or a year. That kind of thing. So
this is the point where I say that's what I'm going to be doing.
This is the point where you say, I've been saying this for the last 2 years. How do I get there?
It's true. It's totally true. But I actually think that I'm almost to the mental space that I have to be. I may not make 12 books a year, but I believe that I'll make 8.
I think 8's a really good goal. A really good goal.
That's a book every 45 days.
Yeah, it's a book every 45 days. I'm to the point now where I've decided that for the most part, I can't do that because some of the stories I want to tell are much larger. And
There's nothing wrong with that.
I do not want to do another Derelict. And what I mean is that I don't want to write one continuous story and then put it out in 3 or 4 parts. I don't want to do that. I want to, this next time, if I have a story that large, I want to spend the time to finish the goddamn thing and put it out. And that, if that means it's going to be a 400-page book, then fine. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now that would be that long, but you never know. Derelict was supposed to be a single book, and look at the goddamn thing now. It's 260,000 words and climbing. So you kind of have to take what you get and move on from there. But
Derelict. Will the fuckers ever die?
will they ever get off this ship? So you just kind of have to, find your way around that and make those decisions. But, if you're writing, space opera, if you're writing urban fantasy series, things like that, then you're, depending on what kind of stories you're telling, maybe only, 70 to 100,000 words a pop. Then yeah, you can definitely do that. And I don't doubt that you'll get there.
I've been trying to get into the right headspace, like you said, for years.
So long as Hurricane Harvey doesn't come back.
If only real life wouldn't interfere with my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. That's the thing, right? It's like all these folks that are doing the NaNoWriMo. Guess what? Real life is going to do its best to keep you from getting that shit done. And,
what's that saying? Man plans, God laughs.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah. That's why, you always have to have a plan A, plan B, plan Z. If you go through this, well, if this happens, I may be able to write 5 words today. And, we've discussed this before. It's like I go write while I'm getting an oil change. I go write when I'm at lunch. I go write, even when I was holding down a full-time day job. So you just kind of have to, put it in where you get it. And it's the same thing with revisions. I'll be reading my book at the doctor's office, editing it, because it's basically find the time and make it happen. And sometimes it can be just as silly as, well, I know I'm going to be waiting 30 minutes at the freaking doctor's office. Might as well get some shit done. So, but yeah, the process, the process is the process. Every time you write, every book you finish, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to learn new things, and you need to be willing to learn new things. And if something's not working, try something else.
One of the things that I'm doing differently now, let me step back and say what my current process is. My current process is to write the book, and then, like you do, use beta readers to get some commentary back on it, and then get it out to the readers. But what I'm looking at changing next year, and for those of you that are beta readers for me and among the patrons, which, it could happen, or in the general listening population, I'm probably going to move to having a single first reader, because I'm actually going to start using a copy editor to find all the necessary things that I've been using beta readers to find. It's going to cost more money, but I'm at that point in my career where it's necessary, and it's going to speed my process along.
So you're going to stop being Microsoft, is what you're telling me?
Yes. Although I still remain Bill Gates' Talboy.
Right. Anyway,
my process of writing right now is a lot more streamlined than yours.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been doing for this last book is I'll write a scene or a part of a scene, and then I'll immediately go back and read over it and get the things fixed that I want to fix in it. If I decide there's something that needs to be changed in the book, I'll go back and change it immediately and get it done. This particular project with Glenn is more challenging, since roughly half of it's pre-written, and it's me rewriting it, and I have to also submit the commentary, that the words that I'm doing, to Glenn so that he can make his changes.
Right.
So it's not my normal writing process. But when I get back to writing on the next Empire book, which is about 30,000 words from being finished, I'll be jumping back into this particular process. And when I reach the end of the book, by doing this, I'm done. It'll go off to the first reader or the beta readers, and if there are comments, there may be minor changes, but it's pretty much done.
Okay.
So maybe I'm not that talented guy. I'm the hack.
I'm not that talented person either.
You were saying earlier that if somebody could do that they're talented. I'm doing it. I'm not sure that I would say that I'm talented, though.
Bollocks. Anyway, I think it's a matter of finding the sweet spot. And if you're just starting this, if you're just finishing your first novel or whatever, and you think it's good enough to publish, get some eyes on it. Get some folks to help you find some stuff. The common crap. It'd be common crap where, you switch character names. You would not believe how often and easy that is to do. When Sue went through Gary's Inferno, she found 2 characters I'd switched, and it made for one fuck of a confusing scene. So, I mean, it's little stuff like that. And I guess part of that is because I wrote that book over, the space of 4 years. Thank you, writer. Thank you, Black. Thank you, Garaga. Thank you, all the other things that interfered with getting it done, Derelict. So there's little stuff like that will just screw you. And you won't see it. 9 times out of 10, you won't find it, because your brain has already spouted it off, and your brain knows best, and it's just going to overlook that stuff. So you have to read kind of carefully to get that through there. Beta readers are wonderful for that. I'm so glad I started using them, like in earnest. So
they are good for that. And to be fair, I'm switching to having a first reader simply because taking the commentary from so many different people and compiling it into one thing is just making my life miserable. That is definitely a bottleneck in my production. I'm going to keep the folks that are currently beta readers as advanced copy readers, and they'll get a copy, and all I'll ask is a review when the time comes.
Right. And what I'm doing now is for folks at the $5 and above level on Patreon, they get the advanced reader copy, which is essentially the beta. And by doing that, basically what I've gotten is I've gotten the feedback from readers I normally wouldn't, that would not normally sign up to be beta readers. They basically just grabbed it and they're like, oh, I can help Paul make this book better. And yes, you'll get in the acknowledgments. So these things really do help you kind of get along. But the bottom line is figure out what the process is to complete the project. And you know, we haven't even begun to talk about all the crap that happens after you've done that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's even more crap that you have to do, especially if you're an indie that, you know, just comes out. But if there's even stuff you got to do if you're traditional published.
When I started writing, I needed to have the validation of somebody telling me I didn't suck, because I can't judge my own work. I've never been able to judge the quality of my own work. So putting a story out, I'd be like, here it comes. This is the one. This is the one where they tell me I suck. And so far it hasn't happened, but part of me is convinced that it eventually will happen.
See,
I've gotten better at saying I can't trust my internal voice as far as knowing whether it's good or not. So I set that part aside. I don't worry anymore about whether other people will think it's good or not. I just tell the story that I want to tell, and I will let other people tell me if it's good or bad. And so far, I've been pleased to say that they've liked it.
I have been fortunate with Gares Inferno that people who found me through the Black and the science fiction stuff that I write and the techno thrillers really enjoyed this book. And that kind of gave me a shot in the arm as far as the confidence to write another one like this. So, you know, it does help. And it was really, really difficult to tell, because sometimes you'll write a scene and go, God, that's shit. And somebody will come back and go, that was my favorite scene of the book. And you're like,
don't worry, someone else will come back and go, that was the worst scene in the book. And probably their reviews will be right next to one another.
Yeah, probably. That's usually how that happens. So, you know, I kept waiting for somebody to make some comment about the animals in Gares Inferno, because Dewhurst is a cat that's modeled off my first cat, Frankie. And then Emmy, the main character, her dog is Luna, which is exactly like my dog, except a little smarter. But
that's not hard.
Actually, Luna's a pretty smart dog. But I thought I was going to get some comments about sentimentality or whatever else in there, but I didn't. People were like, okay, you foreshadowed enough of this where we got it. And it worked. It made sense. So that kind of thing is there, and you worry about it, but it's the right thing for the story. So you just kind of have to roll with it. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And, you know.
It sounds like the way you write, you've got a regimented series of steps that you go through for quality control to make sure that the story works, that all the details are right. And it sounds like it works for you. For me, I've been busy over the last year cutting parts of my post-writing process out, trying to streamline it and make it faster. Mm-hmm. Because I intend to be like the pulp writers of old, and my books may not be, you know, literary masterpieces, but there's going to be twice or three times as many of them as the guys that write literary masterpieces.
If I had to,
that's right for me.
If I had to write a literary masterpiece, the book would take 3 or 4 years and be an utter piece of shit.
You're halfway there.
Oh, you fucker. So God, that was so mean. You bastard.
And I'm not even going to tell you which half.
Why do I bother doing this show with you? Why?
Because you apparently need the abuse.
There's some kind of masochistic streak. I really need to talk to my shrink and just adjust my medication. I can't believe I put up with this shit. Anyway, There is a point where you're talking about madness, where you're sweating over every sentence. And that's, if that works for you, great. I will admit this, there are paragraphs that I write and I go back and I look at them and go, that is utter shit. And I go back and I annihilate the paragraph and start over. And there are other times where it's just, I look at a sentence and go, okay, that sentence sucks. I need to write another one. And then there are some cases where I've used the wrong word because I obviously didn't think of the right one at the time. So I put in a placeholder that was so goddamn awkward. My mind immediately went to it and went, oh yeah, that word. Let's, what should I use instead? Oh, anything. Put that in there. So there are those points where you do that when you go through every sentence with a fine tooth comb. But you've made the statement before that, you know, what comes out of you in the first draft, second draft is usually pretty good stuff, and it's your style. And the moment
it has your voice.
It has your voice. And the moment you start really tinkering with your voice, then you run a lot of risks. And
I believe that to be true.
Yeah. And there are other writers who would absolutely disagree with that statement, and that's fine. That works for them. You and I do write from the gut to a certain degree. And that means that sometimes the words that are there are the right ones, period. There's no other way to say what you were trying to say in the style that you were trying to get across or that your brain throws out there. And you have to be okay with it. And you have to get comfortable with it. And I've been doing this a while, and so have you. And we're still not comfortable with every word we put down.
I've become more comfortable with the words that I'm putting down. And it's a matter of doing it enough times. I discovered that as there's a certain hierarchy of steps, of stages, if you will, of writing. When you start off, you're worried about the words. That's what you think being a writer is about the words. I've got to have this sentence right. I've got to have this exactly proper word here. And as you progress of doing this often enough, you move into worrying more about the larger picture, to the point to where when you get to the stage that I'm at, whatever stage that is, I no longer worry about the specific words in there. I may change them. Some of them may be awkward. Some of them may not work, but I'm focused on the story and the characters as a macro. And I'm just telling the story that I want to tell. And I'm not worrying about the little parts anymore. And it's hard for me to remember that I need to be talking about those things when we're doing the show, because those are no longer a concern for me. I've moved past that point. And as you know, when we tend to think everybody else is like us, and it's hard to remember, we need to keep other things in mind, that other people don't do this, that other people aren't at the same stage we are as writers. And we've got to talk about those things as well. So yeah.
There are traps. There are always traps. And you have to figure out how to avoid them, and you have to figure out how to disarm them when you've put them in there. And we've both, I'm sure you've done this too, where there was a plot element that you thought was going to be good, and then it was just kind of like, this went nowhere, and you have to pull it.
Ha, see, that's where I fooled you. I've got a whole list of things in a document of plot ideas that I've started and then abandoned that I can go back to for hooks in future novels.
That's
I've never pulled them out. They're still there.
They're still there. Well, what I mean is, like, you may have pulled them out of the story and put them somewhere else. It's just like there were no,
I don't have any. I don't have any folder of things of, ooh, I pulled this scene and I'm going to use it later. I never end up reusing it ever. So I've stopped doing it.
It's not, well, for me, it's not so much the scene as there'll be some verbiage like Sue found a tomb where I had, like, God, probably 1,000 words talking about this other thing. And she was like, this is good stuff, but it doesn't belong in this book. And so you pull it. But those are stories I want to write. And I did not realize that was a story unto itself, better told as a tale than a little, 700 or 800 word snippet of dialogue.
And yeah, and that's absolutely a valid thing to set aside. I just don't do it. I figure if I'm going to get to the point of writing something about that, I'll write it fresh.
Fair enough. See, here we go. There are two writers that are, well, one who's very successful, one who's still trying to break it.
I hope to be like you one day.
Oh, whatever. The Mr. I'm still on the top 50 sci-fi author list for 45 months or whatever the fuck it is.
I don't think I am, but sure.
Sure, let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
There's just all these different things, you know, you have to try and deal with. There are some folks who I know write like crazy. They'll basically go through without looking at the words and just storm through it. It'll be full of typos, typos, misspellings or typos, Paul. Wrong words, just bad paragraphs, horrible stuff, you know, just very light on description just to get the story down. And then they will go back and they will edit the ever-loving crap out of it. In some cases, full rewrites. And there are folks that do that and it works for them. And they're usually putting out pretty solid material too. But if I had to beta read that first draft, I would just probably put it down after the second or third page because it would be so bad. I would just not have any way of cleaning it up. So that's, if that works for you, fine. That is not the way I work. Now, like Terry, there are some times where you fuck something up and you go back and you fix it immediately. And it does help speed along the edits. There are other times where it's kind of like, I'm on a roll and don't want to deal with this right now. So I add a comment in Scrivener that, hey, dumbass, come back and look at this paragraph. And then I just go on. So now
whatever works for whoever, we all have a different process.
Yeah. And I leave comments to myself in Scrivener all the damn time. And then, you know, the last step before I go and give it out is start looking at the comments that I've left and see if there's any landmines I need to clear out that I didn't intentionally put there. So there are some things and that you just kind of have to deal with that.
I figure the way I am now, I start looking at the story when I'm done and say, if I start going back and start changing something, then is it really going to be any better than what I put out already? And then I start second guessing myself, because there's been times where I've been like, gosh, you know, I've written this novel. I just don't know. It feels like I meandered all over the first half of this novel and then got down to brass tacks. And I keep going, the other people are going to call me out for this here because it's not fast paced. It's that there's not a fight scene every other chapter. And thus far, very few people have. I don't read my reviews, so I don't really see the things, but the numbers seem to suggest that it's not a problem. So I begin to think that I'm overthinking it. And so don't fall into that trap of overthinking it. Trust what the people that read your book are telling you. If they're not complaining about something, if multiple people are not saying you've done this wrong, then you're not doing it wrong. Don't overthink it.
Pretty much.
And holy shit, I'm still number 46 on the science fiction authors list.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Get fucked. Anyway, bastard. So there are some things that you just kind of have to figure out how you're doing and what you're doing and what you're comfortable with, and the process needs to reflect how you work. And I wouldn't, like I've said and we've said so many times, if it's working for you, don't do anything to it. If it's not working for you, change it. If
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. And I find something broken every time I write a book.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
There's always something I find in the process that needs to be fine-tuned when I'm going through it. It's just the way it is. And I'm not adverse to trying, you know, new things. I'm just not. So every book I try and stretch a little bit more. And sometimes that works and I fly great. And other times I'm flapping around with a broken wing. So it just kind of depends.
Every single book, I'm always changing my process in some way, because I'm never satisfied with my process. I just hope that at the end of the day, I've learned what works for me and what I can change for me. And maybe through this show, those will prove useful to other people. But in the end, it's our own process. We've got to figure it out for ourselves.
I know I read all these writing books in the 90s and when I was in high school as well. and it's so funny because I look back at them, and you'd read something that Orson Scott Card wrote about his particular process, or John Barth or somebody like that who comes from a more literary world, and you'll read about their process, and you sit there and you go, I don't work like that. I don't work like that at all. And if you go and talk to a writing prof who's actually written some books and they're decent, you'll discover that one of the things they don't try and teach you, at least my at CSU, they didn't try and teach this. They did not try and teach process. They told you about process. We discussed process, and we analyzed process of other writers, but we never talked about here's how you write a book, because it's not something definable that you can put out as a generalization to everybody else, beside the fact that you actually need to put the words down.
I think that that's actually a disservice to folks. While there's no correct answer for everyone or for even each individual, so many people don't even realize that there are different methods, different things they can do in their process to try it to see if it works. They go into this in the dark and they're like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I've sharpened all my pencils and I don't know what happens next.
That part of the process is really easy. Put the words down.
Put your butt in the chair and make the magic happen.
That nothing you can't even you can't improve upon a blank page, yes, unless you actually mark it up.
There are so many different ways of putting the words down. We each have our own touchstones of how we want to do it. Some people use Dragon and dictate. Some people write with the keyboard. Some people need music. Some people don't need music.
True.
For me, sometimes I need music. Sometimes I don't need music. It really depends on the mood that I'm in, and any number of other factors. And there are all kinds of other things that affect our process that no one ever said it's okay. And it's going to be different from time to time. Nothing is ever static. Keep trying and see what works for you now. If you're not happy with something, then you fix it. Look at ways that you can change it up. But you've always got to be looking at that process, because you're never going to find, this is the perfect process. I'm set. That's it. That's my career from now on.
No. And actually, I think if you think about that, then you stop learning.
Learning is really important.
And if you stop learning, you're fucked. You might as well just throw in the towel. It's my personal opinion.
You know where my biggest fault in process as a writer is right now? I don't have enough time to read.
That is, a big problem. It is a big problem. And you and I both tried to solve that with audiobooks.
750 hours worth of words in my Audible account. Yeah. I've got enough to exercise for an hour a day for the next 2 years.
Yeah. So there are things that you can do to try and get over that hump. But yeah, reading can sometimes be really difficult. But I think it is necessary, even listening to audiobooks and listening to Needful Things Today. And I've forgotten certain idiosyncrasies of King's style that I really love, and would love to learn how to write like that, because it just flows so naturally, even though it's more verbose than I would do. It sings in a different way, and I wish my work had that kind of feel to it, at least to me. So I think there's a lot to be gained by reading, and I've said this before too. It's just like what I do with movies. If I really enjoy the movie, I'll go back and watch it again and try and analyze what I liked. Why did I like this? And I'll do the same thing for books, because I want to know. My creative mind says, I want to know why that struck me the way it did. Because if it struck me that way, then and it's something that I really enjoyed, maybe it's something I want to put in my writing. Maybe it's something I want to learn from, so I can, bring that feeling of excitement or humor or terror or, whatever else into my own work. And hopefully, learn how to be a better writer that way. And I think if you're not reading, you're just not getting that experience.
So just as a side here, When you read something, do you find that aspects of that writer's style bleed into what you're currently writing?
I don't know. I don't know. I know there are folks, and we've talked to some of them, who don't read anything while they're working on a book because they're afraid that it is going to bleed into what they're writing.
I know that it does for me, and I don't care.
That's another one of those things where results may vary. I think you just kind of have to go with it. But I do think that when I was honing my style back in college, the process that John Clark Pratt suggested, which is go get one of your favorite short stories and sit down and retype it, because it gets you into the cadence of what that writer was doing and kind of helps you figure out how you would change some things.
Sure, if you type with more than 2 fingers.
This is true, but you could also do it with longhand. The bottom line is get a feel for what that's like, how your internal monologue processes those words as you're putting the stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
And it did help. It did help. And it's just one of those little tricks that seems so stupid. And yet after you try it, you might be surprised at how much it can actually affect what you're doing. As far as, perfecting the style of what you're doing, how you write and everything else, and even the stories you tell. So I think those are very important things. And if you want to learn how to put a story together, go find your favorite story and tear it apart and see how it was put together from a plot point of view, from a character point of view, from a dialogue point of view, from little niceties like foreshadowing, little textures that people add, and, how you can basically put that in your writing, ape it, steal it. If you're not thieving, you're doing it wrong. So
don't steal the words, steal the style.
Steal the style. Well, sometimes I steal words, big time.
Well, you can steal individual words. You just can't steal, too much, or then you're a plagiarist.
Yeah, this is true. But I've stolen turns
of phrase are okay.
I've stolen those. I've stolen the end of sentences or even the beginning of sentences because it just felt right. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. But I knew when I went back and read it, oh God, I cribbed that from somewhere else. And it worked for that particular moment because that character sounded like that in my head. So, I mean, there's little stuff like that you can do when you're actually writing and when you're figuring out how to, get the book done. And it makes it fun for you too. There's nothing wrong with homages. There's nothing wrong with putting that stuff in there. I mean, hell, The Black is just a mashup of The Blob, Alien, and The Thing. That's all it is. But it's unique in the way I guess I told it, and the creature has certain unique facets. But shit, I stole all of that, and I stole scenes from some of those flicks and made them my own.
And that's perfectly fine too, because your telling of a scene is going to be different than that scene actually was portrayed.
And there are readers who have contacted me and said, when I saw this coming, I was like, oh God, I know exactly what's going to happen next, because they'd seen The Thing and they were like, oh God, Paul's going to do this. Oh, and they loved it. They loved it. And so it was okay. So, I mean, it's all part of, how you're writing, and, the process is not just about how you bring the book to completion, but it is how you travel the book as you're going through it. And sometimes it can be a really rocky road.
Every time I read something or see something that really moves me as a person, I want to write something about it. Usually I'm able to stop myself because the obvious proof of that is that I haven't written something like James Bond. Because every time I see a James Bond movie, I'm like, oh, I got to do something like this. This would be a really fun book to write. And then I stop myself. No.
Yeah, but that's primarily because it's traveled ground, and it's how do you put a new spin on that?
Have you read any of my books? Every single thing that I do in mine has been well traveled. It's how you mix it together.
This is very true, but the James Bond character is I mean, you've stolen story elements because it's impossible not to.
I could write a science fiction spy thriller with somebody like that. I could do it. And I would have a blast writing that particular story.
We had Jake Bible on last week for his interview, and he talked about the fact that, he's writing science fiction noir. I mean, that is just sounds so perfect to me because it covers it just basically says, okay, I'm taking 30s and 40s noir and putting it in the science fiction setting. That's perfect. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Hammer in space.
Exactly. Or Philip Marlowe in space, or Sherlock freaking Holmes in space. Whatever you're interested in doing there. And those stories can be derivative and yet really fresh at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason why you can't.
You can tell the most derivative story and it will be entertaining if you put yourself into that story.
Yeah. And that's the big thing is learning how to make sure that you're owning it. And I don't spend nights figuring out, sitting there thinking, how do I make this different from everything else? I don't do that. There's no point. It's the idea comes, the image or whatever else. And, some people started Derelict Marines and thought it was going to be Event Horizon. And I kind of gave it that feel.
I think it's more like the black hole.
And for that. And then it went sideways, as it was supposed to, because I was telling a different kind of story. Even though the first time I came up with Derelict is the idea was just basically make it space zombies was how it was originally going to be. And I'm so glad I did not go with that. I took it where I wanted it to go, and it has led into this really interesting place, a very complicated place, but it's led me into a really interesting tale that's much more complex than I thought it was going to be. And that's because I was just willing to say, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want.
If you let your inner 2-year-old have the head in deciding where the story is going to go, and if you don't sit there and be critical about it and go, oh no, that's been done a billion times before, or that's going to be stupid. Just let your writer and your muse take you where it says, oh, this will be cool. You will have a good story.
Yeah. This will be cool. If it's cool to you, it's going to be cool to somebody else. I don't know how many other somebody else's, but the bottom line, if it's cool to you, then you will put a proper spin on it and you will make it into something that's altogether unique and yours. And that's, I think, the most important part of figuring out what kind of writer you are is to just have fun. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be a slog.
And you can accept that not everything you write is going to appeal to every single one of your readers.
Shit, no. Hell no.
Just accept it. Some things you're going to write are going to be more popular than other things. Some things are going to have a wider audience. Some people are going to be, fans of a particular thing, and they'll be very fervent about it, and it won't find a wide following elsewhere. That's just the nature of the beast. Just accept it.
That's Garaga.
It is Garaga.
The people that have read it are like, when are you writing more of this? And everybody else is like, huh?
Who?
I see those titles, but I'm not interested in them at all. So there's always this this give and take that goes on, but the bottom line is, figure out how to channel your inner 2-year-old and shepherd them in where they need to go. And sometimes that involves car crashes with Matchbox cars. It requires you to destroy a tinkered toy building that you've built up. That beautiful spaceship that you made out of Legos, it just needs to crash and hit the floor. Sometimes you got to do that.
The way it involves for me with my inner 2-year-old is just visualize some guy sprinting down a corridor trying to catch up. That's how I deal with my 2-year-old.
I think there is a certain point where you kind of have to pull back and say, all righty, let's scale this back a little bit and kind of change the direction a little, massage that and put them on the right way.
There have been times where I've written a chapter or a scene and I'm done with it and I go, I think I better take a step back here and change this just a little bit because I can see where this story is going and I'm not sure that's the story I want to tell here.
There is a point where you kind of have to put the leash on.
I don't put the leash on. I let the 2-year-old write to where it wants to, And then I make the decision when I'm done writing that scene, is that right? And it's only been 2 or 3 times where I've done that. So it's very rare for me to step back and say, okay, I've got to chop this because I've went down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Usually my 2-year-old is pretty good about taking me down an entertaining path. And as long as I'm entertained, that's all I'm looking for.
Keep in mind, I started Gare's Inferno 3 times. I got 10,000 words into it, threw it away. Got 15,000 words into it, threw it away, and then started it again, and then it rolled. And sometimes you have to try and find your way into the story that works for you, and it's not always easy. Sometimes if you're trying to tell something more complex or more nuanced, you're going to have some false starts, and false starts are okay because you learn from them. They're not, like we said before, you're not wasting words. You're not wasting your time. These are all things that you learn from because you're like, well, I wrote that scene. I really like it. It doesn't fit in this book. Or what the fuck was that? And why is it here? And you rip it out and you throw it in the dead letter file. Or if you're Terry, you just go, people will tell me if it sucks and move on.
It's true. And here's a dirty little secret that I know we've talked about before. A lot of writers don't think you have to practice. Like every other thing in the universe, you become better the more often you do something. And sometimes that involves doing something poorly.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Just because you sucked doesn't mean that you're always going to suck. Just keep doing it, and you will discover one day you'll look and go, how the hell did I get here? I was back there. When did this change?
One of the essay writers we covered in college, and I can't remember his name to save my life. I think it was Paul Bowles, maybe. I don't remember. He would, when he got up in the morning, he would go to his typewriter or his computer. I guess it was his computer. And he would open up the program to start writing in, and then he would turn the screen off.
That's one way to do it.
Start typing. Because what it did was allowed him to not see the words, not worry about the words, just basically start pouring that out because it got the brain working. And then when he was done doing that, he would more often than not throw away what he'd just written, even if it's just 800 to 1,000 words of babble. And it doesn't even have to be related to the story. It's just basically clearing your mind. It's just getting the shit out there.
You talk about that, but I've been thinking about doing something very similar to that, and I'm actually about to start experimenting with it. I've had this on and off love affair with Dragon for doing voice work on it. And I'm probably going to go back and give it another go, but it's so distracting seeing the words on the screen that I actually have this right here that I intend to go ahead and slap this on my face so that I cannot see what is there. But if I need to, I can go, what did that say? Is it still typing?
Terry in literary bondage.
So
I was waiting for the whips and shades to show up.
Boy, you apparently thought this story was going in a completely different direction than it was actually going. But part of my process when I'm doing voice dictation is I keep stopping and fixing things. But I know that I'm going to go back and read through it to fix the things that either Dragon has misunderstood or that I want to change. I know that this is already going to happen. If I can stop myself from futzing about it as I'm doing it, I think that I will increase my word output for that initial pass by 50%.
Yeah.
I just have to break myself from staring at the damned monitor. I know that folks like Kevin J. Anderson, they will go on hikes and dictate the story and then clean it up once somebody has taken that and put it into words. And that's what I would like to emulate.
There is a certain glory, and maybe this is why I've always written like this since I started doing books. I, for some reason, have always been more comfortable keeping chapters in their own files, which is one of the reasons why Scrivener is so wonderful for me. And what it does is it gets you focused on what you're writing as opposed to what you wrote. because it just makes it a lot easier to focus on that chapter in that moment and
The
not worry about the
immediacy
rest
of
of
it.
it. Huh?
The immediacy of it.
Yeah, the immediacy. And you're not looking at the last paragraph that you wrote in the other chapter, which was always a problem when I was using Word because, or any other traditional word processing program. It's just easier for me to do it this way. And it's probably a singular deal. I mean, I know tons of people who use Word or Open Office or whatever to write in. And that's great if it works for them. Scrivener just works the way that I write.
Well, you know what? I write in Word, but I write in chapters.
Mhm.
I have a separate file for each chapter.
Do you really?
I do.
See, you're a perfect candidate for Scrivener. You really are.
I actually have a copy of Scrivener, and when it updates to the next Windows version, I'm going to buy that.
There you go. Oh, by the way, it's NaNoWriMo. So Literature and Latte right now has no doubt their NaNoWriMo deal going on where you can get Scrivener for pretty damn cheap.
Yeah.
And it's not an expensive program to begin with.
It isn't. And
So-
I've got it. I just have, since my most comfortable writing is basically a plain freaking screen, I've turned off the spell checking. It doesn't show me errors as I'm writing anymore because I don't want to know.
Right.
It's a distraction. If I could just write with it, and I know you can in Scrivener, just put the words there on the screen. I don't need any of the other features. I just need that.
Right.
And Word has something that at the end of thing, when I've got all however many chapters that I want to do, it's a couple of button clicks, and I've imported all of those chapters in the correct order into one single document, and it's good. So I don't have to worry about it. I can do it in Word, one chapter at a time, and be happy.
My problem with that was always trying to put it back together again, which is why I used to write with Emacs, and then I wrote a script to basically put the book together when I was done.
There's nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah, it's this whole nerd thing.
And for those that are listening to the podcast in audio, what I was holding up was a set of sleeping. What do you call these damn things?
He was holding up a pair of bondage blinders. Don't even try and freaking.
Where's my ball gag? That'll stop me from dictating.
There you go. See, that's what I was waiting for. The whips, the chains, and the ball gag.
Sleeping mask. I was holding up a sleeping mask that I actually bought so that I could go ahead and write blind into the program, but still occasionally lift up the thing and make sure that it's still actually writing, because I'm paranoid that I'll start a chapter, get to the end of it, and it hasn't been doing shit.
And see, if that's the case, I would also have your phone or something else recording at the same time, just in case.
One of these days I may be like Kevin J. Anderson and just get a recorder and go out and take a walk through the neighborhood and write.
And have somebody transcribe it for you afterwards.
And have somebody transcribe it after me. Boy, doesn't that sound first world? I'm going to have some minion in some third world nation go ahead and transcribe my mutterings.
No, what you do is you go find a college student, local community college, who needs some money. That's what you do.
I suppose. I've never gotten that far along. But obviously it works for Kevin J. Anderson since he's written, what, like 17 billion books?
Yeah, whatever. You're
Kevin just J. jealous. Anderson. You are just jealous.
I have never read his work, so I can't really be jealous.
I haven't either. I've read a few, I think. But yeah. Well, Paul, I think we've wandered far, far away from where we started this, but it was a fun conversation anyway.
Slightly.
Folks, if you want to chastise us, just like you should every week, because we've wandered far afield of where we started this show, send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find Paul on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. You can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. You can find us on YouTube, where you're hopefully watching this episode and seeing our ugly faces, at YouTube/DRS podcast. Folks, if you want to help us do this better, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. You can get the audio from the completely unedited audio from the shows that we do and hear what nonsense we say before and after.
And unedited video, for that matter.
And unedited video, and get it a week early. You can also participate in monthly live casts. It's a lot of fun. I would recommend it. And it only costs you a little bit every month to support, two loser writers like ourselves.
And we greatly appreciate it.
We do appreciate it a lot. You also, we can't escape without thanking the good folks at podhoster.com who host the audio for this nonsense that we do. Paul, we need to tell everybody who our $10 supporters are.
And our $10 patrons as of this recording are Robert Slade, Caleb, the sexiest member of Cooley's Angels, James.
Is that Nathan, a thing? Cooley's Angels? I could totally write a television show starring Jacqueline, what's her name, with Cooley's Angels.
Nathan's 6 socks sit in the sink soaking in soap suds petty. Thank you for that, you bastard. Drew Empire at Bone Thugs in Harmony Bernardi, John Kilgallen, Chris Winder, Isabel Cushy, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, J.R. Hanley, and Sue Who Loves You Baby Bayman. Telly Savalas inspired because of our last show.
Who loves you, baby?
Who loves you, baby? I can just see Jake Bible, wearing the fedora with the lollipop. I can just see that. Whoa. My watch caught on my microphone. Sorry about that. Oh, shit, my watch band broke. Well, that's not good.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, boy.
Well, folks, this is what they call a plot complication.
Yeah, let's call it that.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.